want to do a few quick word association exercises. I'm going to mention a person, and I just want to hear the first thing that comes to mind. Please don't overthink it. Looking for, again, just a word or a phrase. And I'll call on you one at a time. First one is Vice President Harris. The first word or phrase that comes to mind when I mention Vice President Harris. Everybody have one? You all do? Okay. Joel, why don't you go first?
New.
William?
I'll say strong.
Andrew?
Power hungry.
Samuel?
Politician.
Jake?
Corporatist.
Noah?
Mine was also politician.
John?
Energetic.
Okay. Next person, looking for a word or a phrase. First that comes to mind. Former President Trump. Everybody have a word or a phrase that comes to mind? Great. Andrew?
Abhorrent.
Samuel?
Fascist.
Jake?
Also fascist.
Noah?
Bigot.
John?
Controversy.
Joel?
Idiot.
William?
Egotist.
Okay. Let's go back to Vice President Harris. What, if anything, do you like about her? Anybody want to tell me anything you like about her? Joel?
She's not 60 or older.
Okay. William?
She's well spoken.
Okay. Samuel?
She's professional.
All right. The other four of you, anything else? Andrew?
She's very intelligent.
Okay. Jake?
She's got good experience politically.
Okay. John and Noe, got anything positive about her?
I was also thinking along the lines of like very professional and well spoken.
John?
Yeah, it's kind of agree with everything that's been said, but yeah, I think just her it's very new, very different. I think that's what we need.
Okay. Let's go back to former President Trump. What, if anything, do you like about him? Andrew?
He doesn't lie about who he is. He shows you who he is.
Okay. Joel?
At least he says he cares about farmers, even if he doesn't back it up.
Okay. Anything else? John?
He's bold.
Okay.
He's loud.
Noah?
He makes it known where he stands.
Okay. Anything else that you like about him? All right. Let's go back to Vice President Harris. What, if anything, do you dislike about her? All right, Jake.
I think she just says stuff like she doesn't seem very genuine.
Okay. William?
She has a bad history with like non-violent criminal offenders.
Okay. Samuel?
She continues to support the war in Palestine.
Okay. Andrew?
Yeah, similar to what Jake said, but she's very inconsistent on her policy opinions.
Okay. John,
I think she's very vague. She doesn't really let you know where she stands for anything.
Noah,
Yeah, we're going along the same lines of like inconsistency, vagueness, like career politician, like saying what people want to hear.
okay. Joel,
I just have a feeling that all the progressive things she's running on won't happen.
all right. Let's go back to former President Trump. What, if anything, do you dislike about him? Samuel?
He's a convicted criminal. It's been proven that he's a rapist. I mean, I'm sure everyone has a list of things.
Jake?
I don't think he realizes where his like actions, what his actions lead to, like just in general.
Okay. Actions, you're talking about political actions or personal actions?
His words, his political actions, his personal everything, yeah, all the above.
Okay. Andrew?
The state he left the country in.
I mean, after his presidency.
Yeah.
William?
I've worked in a hospital for over 7 years, and I think he spread a lot of disinformation around COVID and the vaccine at the time, which caused like a lot of like serious direct harm to people.
John?
Yeah, he's very unprofessional and also like I feel like he's intentionally dishonest.
Got it. So imagine you could have the experience of spending a half hour hanging out in a bar with either Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. So if you had to choose by a show of fingers, who would choose hanging with Trump? None of you. Okay. So all seven would choose Harris? Okay. So tell me why. John, why?
I guess just to like see what actually get to talk to her. I guess one-on-one, see what she's about. Because like I feel like I already know a lot about Donald Trump. Like there's a lot to know about Donald Trump, but there's not that much about Kamala Harris. I mean, I don't know. It would be a good opportunity to learn some things.
Okay. By a quick show of fingers, how many of you would say that one of the main reasons you want to hang out with Kamala Harris is to learn more about her, that you don't know enough about her, and you want to learn more in that half hour? 3 of you. Okay, so 4 in total. All right. So what are the other reasons why you'd want to hang out with Harris instead of Trump? Joel?
Be an opportunity to show her what's happening to people in Gaza and Ukraine based off of American-made weapons. Hopefully, show her the importance of changing that.
Okay. William?
I feel like it'd be more of a hangout than something with Donald Trump. From every interview with Donald Trump, it kind of just turns into like a rambling kind of session. Whereas Kamala Harris, I feel like whether I learn about her or not, it would just be like a conversation.
Got it. Any other reasons?
I'm sure hanging with Trump would be entertaining.
It would be entertaining.
I mean, I'm sure something out of pocket says.
I'm sorry. No, I'm missing what you're saying. Say it again.
No, I was just saying, I'm sure something out of pocket would be said, so I'm sure it would be entertaining whether you were excited for it. It's like media, reality
but-
TV.
So if it would be entertaining to hang with Trump, why would you rather hang with Harris?
Oh, I was being that genuine, but I would rather hang with Harris because I feel like Trump, you kind of already know where he stands, and so having a genuine conversation with Kamala Harris would be an opportunity. It was
Got
just a joke. It was just a joke about Trump saying something out of pocket. So.
It's all right. Don't worry about it. Thanks for clarifying it for me. By a show of fingers, who still might not vote in this election and might sit it out? 4 of you. Okay. All right. So Samuel, tell me about that.
I most likely will vote, 90%, 95%. It's just, really depending on Kamala Harris's policies, if any, but what happens in this next month? How strong is she going to appear to put an effort into doing what she says? Are there going to be any stronger policies? Are there going to be any actual plans going forward? Because I think the biggest thing that she has going for her, and the same thing with Biden, is just that they're not Trump, which, sucks that that's the choice that you have to deal with.
Okay. Jake, tell me about that you might not vote.
Yeah, it just feels like again, like kind of what Samuel was saying, it feels like a lesser of two evils type of situation. And also, like Samuel said, I probably will vote just because the stakes are pretty high. And but I'm still like thinking about just not, because it might not even be worth my time at this point. But yeah, like I said, I probably will.
Okay. Why would it not be worth your time?
People say their votes don't matter. Yeah, I live in like a swing state, Philadelphia, pretty important city at this point, but like still it just feels like the neither candidate is really running on the will of like the majority of the people anyway. So they're both bought by lobbyists, corporate lobbyists, so it doesn't really matter.
Got it. Okay. Noah?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fully planning to as of now, but it's like they were saying, it's kind of feels like a lesser of two evil situation, or just pick who you dislike the least. And it's been feeling like that for quite a few cycles now. So it's just a little bit, it makes you feel not great about your choice, whatever way you decide to go.
Okay. Got it. And Joel?
Yeah, like she's shown she's going to keep sending weapons to Israel, and she's going to keep cracking down on the border, and that's going to result in deaths. So I just don't know if I can vote for someone who's going to kill people.
Okay. Got it. And Joel, you mentioned before you're critical of sending weapons to Ukraine. Did I hear that right?
I guess I meant just like fueling the war, keeping the American industrial complex shuffling weapons into whatever part of the country or whatever part of the globe wants to fight. So not like I support Ukraine and sending and helping them defend, but not necessarily like an aggressiveness to it. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. By a show of fingers, who has given serious thought to voting for a third-party candidate for president this year? 2 of you, John and Joel. John, who have you thought about voting for?
So back when like RFK was running, I was thinking of voting for him just because he was like, he seemed very promising. Like the policy he was talking about, seemed very promising, and he had like a history of like doing what he says he does. Like if he wants to do something, then he kind of sets it out and does it. So he seemed like an honest person. But then I think he dropped out, and then he endorsed Trump. So it was like, oh, it kind of felt like it was like some big parade, or like it was part of some plan. So
Got it. So at this point, you're not planning to vote for him or any other third-party candidate?
no, it's just no one really has popped up that I've noticed.
Okay. And Joel, who are you thinking of voting for?
Jill Stein.
Okay. And is there a chance you'll still vote for her? Or you told us you were likely to vote for Harris.
Yeah. But if I can't stand like I'm still on the fence about Harris because she's going to support human crises or like oppression of people. So I don't know if I can do that. And if I don't, I might not vote or I might vote for Jill Stein. I'm going to probably decide that day.
Decide that day, really?
Yep.
Okay. So just in your mind, is voting for Jill Stein and voting for Kamala Harris, are they equal consequences in your mind?
No.
Okay.
A vote for Jill Stein would just be a vote saying, hopefully, you know, this is another person who doesn't support either party. This is a person who isn't willing to support the Democrats because they run on all these progressive policies but never support them. So here's a candidate who I truly believe, or who I think might actually support them. So might vote for her.
What do you make of the argument that a vote for Jill Stein is basically a vote supporting Trump?
It's kind of true, but also my vote is my say, and I should vote for the candidate that or like a candidate I support rather than a candidate I don't support. I think it's better to vote for someone I support slightly rather than just vote against someone and vote for someone I don't like.
Okay. So very quickly, make the case for why you would actually vote for Harris then.
I guess if it really feels like Wisconsin needs that Democrat vote, or if somehow she says something of like, oh yeah, I'll help the kids on the border with Mexico, or if something in Israel gets resolved with support of her or the Biden administration, like if they play a role in that, that could be a way that she could still win my vote.
Got it. All right. Thank you. So I'd like you to stop and think about this next question before you answer it, and I'll call on you one at a time. And Joel, I basically just asked that question of you. I'm going to ask it of the other six. So you were recruited all because you lean towards supporting Harris at this point. So what I'd like to know is, how did you end up deciding to support Harris? I'd like to know how you arrived at that decision, like what the logic was. Like Joel just shared his. I want to hear from the other six of you, how you came to that conclusion. So William, why don't you go first? How'd you end up with Harris?
I think the endorsement of Kamala Harris seems more like a rejection of Donald Trump, and the rejection of Donald Trump in the current Republican Party comes from like a few, either you call them beliefs or topics that I feel strongly about, like LGBT rights, reproductive rights. So it makes it impossible to support anyone currently in the Republican Party. So the endorsement of Kamala Harris and the strong endorsement is more coming just from rejection of Donald Trump and those taking away of those rights.
Okay. Jake, how'd you end up with Harris? At least where you are right now.
Yeah. Just because, yeah, kind of like what William was saying, the Republican Party in this day and age, they seem to want to take the country backwards in some ways, and they have like overall not shown any sort of actual like care about any of the citizens of this country, like of any besides like the super wealthy ones. So, and the basically the big corporates and stuff and businesses. But yeah, so it's basically just because she's the candidate that the Democratic Party chose at this point. I probably would not have picked her if there was a Democratic primary, depending on who else was running.
Okay. Noah, how'd you end up with Harris?
Yeah, I would say it's along similar lines of human rights. I wouldn't necessarily say it's like voting against the Republican Party, but since Trump is the current representative for the presidency, his current beliefs socially are what will get thrust into that position, and yeah, it makes it hard to support.
Okay. Samuel.
Yeah, I really did not think Biden had a chance based on this summer and the first debate. But with Kamala Harris, it does almost feel like it is a new choice, even if it's not no, it's not ideal. It definitely feels like having an actionable candidate.
Andrew?
I feel like I had to look at it from like a utilitarian standpoint and say, you know, we're stuck in this two-party system where I unfortunately can't really vote in a way that's in alignment with what my values actually are. I have to vote in a way that looks to see which candidate is going to essentially enact less damage, and in this case, it would be Kamala.
John, what about you?
I feel like it's just Kamala Harris is like a step in the right, just a step in the right direction, even if it is like a small step. I extremely dislike MAGA politics, and a lot of the Republican Party is like basically that that extremeness, and I dislike it a lot, and I feel like Kamala Harris would just be um, it does kind of fall into like the lesser of the two evils, but I feel like there's a little bit more promise with her.
Okay. So I just want to understand, for the 7 of you, is supporting Harris something you would do because you're pro-Harris, or is it more something that you're anti-Trump? Everybody understand the question? You're all kind of marching in the same direction, but you're marching for somewhat different reasons. I just want to get a quick sense from you. How many of you would say your support for Harris would be because you are proactively pro-Harris? None of you. So for most of you, it is you're anti-Trump. Show of fingers. Who'd say it's because you're anti-Trump? All 7 of you. Okay. Got it. So we've covered this a little bit earlier, so I don't want to go through it in too much more detail. But I just want to make sure I cover this at least a little bit more thoroughly. So each of you supports Harris, but I can tell the level of enthusiasm is very modest, to say the least. Other than what we've already talked about, what's keeping you from supporting Harris wholeheartedly? Where's your hesitation? I've heard some of it already. Joel, you made yours very clear earlier. Anybody else want to tell me or just clarify for me where the hesitation is? Andrew, go ahead.
I feel really unclear about where her values actually lie. You know, I remember when she was running in the Democratic primary in the previous presidential election, and her platform included a lot of progressive policies. And then when the chance came to throw her hat in the ring for VP, all of those policies got swept under the rug essentially, and she just completely did a 180 in my opinion on what her values were. And I think we're seeing that similarly with this election, you know, I mean, one specific instance that comes to mind is how she's flipped her stance on fracking, and now supports fracking when she previously didn't. And so it just seems as though that her values and what her policies are based on what she thinks people will like rather than what she believes in.
Okay. Jake, go ahead.
Yeah. Just like I mentioned before, she doesn't seem very like genuine about things she's saying. Especially in the debate, it almost seemed like she avoided a lot of questions, like in general. And I just don't really know what exactly I'm going to be voting for with her. I mean, I assume it's just similar to the Biden administration, which I obviously would prefer over Trump, but there were, you know, obviously the flaws. There were many flaws in that administration as well. So it seems like it's just going to be another 4 years of the same administration almost.
Okay. Samuel?
Yeah, kind of like what everyone has said throughout this, just kind of keeping the status quo how it is. If we look at her policies when she was running, they really weren't that progressive. Like her student loan like she was really against student loan repayment unless it was like a very specific thing you did. A lot of the things that like when she was running were kind of against odds with people, and we're seeing that a little bit come out, just kind of not so much flip-flopping, but more like an inconsistency with what she's saying.
Yeah, when you say when she was running, you're referring to it in past tense, you mean in 2019?
Yes.
Okay, got it. All right. In the interest of time, let me just move on. What evidence do you have that Kamala Harris understands your concerns? Right. Samuel?
Well, she's much younger. Her, you know, her stepdaughter, I assume, is around our age. Like she's just closer to someone who understands our reality rather than, you know, people who have, in Joe Biden's case, been career politicians since, you know, the 60s or 70s, or just in their own reality like Donald Trump.
Okay. So just to push back on Sam, so Donald Trump has a son who's younger than you are. He can't relate to your generation?
If he, I mean, he's also older than my grandparents too.
Okay. Got it. William?
At least just from political ads, whether that's directly through the Harris, through her, or just her campaign, focusing on issues that are affecting a lot of like middle class area people, things like grocery prices or housing prices. At least it makes it seem like she's trying to connect with an audience, whether her policies will align with that or not.
Okay. Is it fair to say, since most of you didn't raise your fingers, that most of you don't have evidence that Vice President Harris understands your concerns? John?
I don't want to say that exactly. For me, it's more like I can't really think of anything super specific that kind of says that she has my interest, like she has me or as a person or just my general person. She's looking out for me or anything like that. It's very, like I said, she's very vague. Like I can think of a few instances where she like says she cares, but like saying she cares and actually doing it or having a plan, are two very different things.
Okay. Got it. Joel?
Yeah, I feel like if she did understand where I was coming from or where we were, she would have done some work in her past 4 years to do that. And since she hasn't, that leads me to believe she's more of an elitist. Not like Trump, but still an elitist.
Okay. What advice would you give to Donald Trump to convince you to switch and vote for him instead? In other words, you'd say to Trump, you need to do such and such to get me to consider changing my vote and vote for you instead. No, go ahead.
Stop ignoring his PR team and just saying whatever he wants to say.
Okay. And if he did that, would you actually think of voting for him?
I mean, I would consider, I guess now it's almost getting to the point of too little too late, but you know, if you actually can think about what your words and your actions and how they affect people when you're in those seats, and actually be professional in your job, it can have an impact.
Okay. So let me ask you the question this way. For any of you, is it at all conceivable that you'll vote for Trump this year? No. So Noah, there's no realistic chance that you're going to do that.
No, I was just like,
Yeah,
trying to answer the question.
I know, I appreciate it. By a show of fingers, would any of you say it's realistic? I just asked that question, sorry. By a show of fingers, who has at least one parent who plans to vote for the candidate you do not plan to vote for? And if you have a parent who plans to vote for a candidate that you don't plan to vote for. So William and Jake, okay? For the two of you, has that parent tried to persuade you to vote for that candidate? No for Jake. William?
No parents, but my grandparents have.
Okay. And how'd you respond?
I try not to let politics at least involve how I feel about my family, whether I'd support whether their ideas or who they support as a candidate. So I kind of just try to respond in a cordial way, but without really taking much heart to what they're saying.
How many grandparents is it that are putting pressure on you?
Just one. I should have said grandparent, my grandma.
Grandmother, okay. So we've got some video for you, each about a minute long, of Trump attacking Harris and Harris attacking Trump. Just want to get your reactions after you watch it. So by a show of fingers, who's heard Trump say things like this about Harris? Who's heard them before tonight? All 7 of you. And by a show of fingers, who's heard Harris say these things about Trump? Show of fingers. All 7 of you. Okay. And by a show of fingers, does seeing this back and forth exchange cause you to shift how you feel about Harris or Trump? Two of you it does. 3 of you. Okay. Joel, how's it change how you feel?
Made me support Harris a little bit more. It was just a really clear reminder of how incoherent and weird Trump is and what he says. And some of those things from Kamala was pretty well said. Yeah.
All right. Samuel?
Yeah, really just showing the difference between reasoning between both campaigns and parties.
So it moved you closer to Harris?
Yes.
Okay. And what about you, Noah?
Yeah, I would say it just showcases a little bit of how she's a bit more professional than Trump. But it also showcases just the fact of the state that our country's elections are in, that instead of talking about policy and what we plan to do, we just attack each other.
So both campaigns are trying to appeal to men, but in different ways. I'm curious what you make of this just released ad from an organization called White Dudes for Harris. I mean, how many of you have heard of this organization? Show of fingers. 2 of you have heard of White Dudes for Harris, okay? By a show of fingers, who thinks that ad will appeal to guys who are undecided about who they plan to vote for? Two of you, Joel and John. So for the other 5 of you, you don't think it'll have an impact? William, why not?
I don't know if it would. Anyone who's like undecided, I don't know if that would like sway them toward voting for Harris.
Why not?
I don't really know. I guess it didn't really have much substance. It was kind of just like fun, funny, interesting. Like anyone who's like really undecided, I feel like is doing it for some sort of issue or something they feel strongly about, and that was kind of just like a fun little ad.
Okay. Noah, what about you?
Yeah, it didn't actually have substance. Anyone can say, "Oh, we talk to everyone, we support everyone, we're gonna build you up," but you can always just say that. So I don't really think that would push people one way or the other.
Okay. Got it. Joel, quickly, why do you think it would push somebody?
There was one specific thing somewhere at the beginning that stuck out of pretty much like, like white guys are getting attacked online, but it's those white guys, it's not you. In a way, like it seemed like that could appeal to like some of the moderates that I work with on the job site, where they're they're kind of Republican. They are conservative. They aren't Republican. But they're on the fence. They don't like Trump because of religious ideas or whatever. And pretty much just saying like, oh yeah, you don't need to vote this way. And then at the end saying, and at the end of the day, it's your own choice. You know, doesn't matter about what the other guys think. Your vote's your vote. It seemed like just an encouragement to think in a different way. But yeah, it really didn't have much substance aside from that.
Got it. Okay. The Trump campaign is working to appeal to certain men about a crypto conference that Trump attended. I'm just curious about your reaction to a little snippet of a speech that he gave back in July. By a show of fingers, who thinks that this message will appeal to guys who are undecided about who they plan to vote for? 3 of you. Andrew, why?
I feel like Trump does a good job appealing to sort of that like incel demographic of guys that are into cryptocurrency, and I can see that being a sort of pull for some voters.
Okay. Samuel, I see you nodding. Same reason?
Yeah, pretty much. Just in my experience, the people who are really into like crypto or the internet or technology or business generally have they like to say they're apolitical, which really just means that they don't really know what they're talking about for most things. And I think, the conservative platform being so pro business kind of makes them lean towards that.
Got it. John, why don't you think this would cause people to lean toward Trump?
It just seems like he's like kind of just talking fluff. He's just kind of like, it seems like he's like buttering them up. I don't know. Like he kind of knows what he's talking about, but it just seems like, to me, it seems fake. It seems like he's just doing it to kind of like get that demographic. It's like I don't think he actually even knows anything about Bitcoin other than stating those like factoids that he said. Like he doesn't know like the core values and like what Bitcoin's all about. It just seems like almost like a market ploy.
Got it. Okay. How will voting for Harris make your lives better? Samuel?
She won't be Donald Trump. I mean, that's a very big thing. She, won't
Okay.
be a threat to democracy worldwide.
Got it. Okay. Joel?
If she follows through on what she's running for, increases on taxes on the wealthy, more subsidies or like more assistance with medication costs, that could actually do a good thing for our economic system, and reduce costs of living.
Okay. What else? William?
I think, like Samuel said, she's not Donald Trump, and if she's able to keep access to things like abortion or keep LGBT rights or even do anything to try to decrease the cost of living for the average American citizen, she'll make my life directly better by benefiting me and the people that I care about.
Okay. I want you to think back to when Trump was president from January of 2017 to January of 2021. Please give me a word or phrase to describe what life in America was like during that period of time. Everybody have one? What was life in America like during that period of time? Noah?
Unbalanced.
John?
Hectic.
Andrew?
Dystopian.
Samuel?
Uncertain.
Jake?
Anxiety ridden.
William?
Frustrating.
Joel?
Confusing.
All right. I'd like you to think about the period we've been in during Biden's term. from January 2021 to the present. Give me a word or a phrase to describe what life in America has been like during this period of time. Everybody have one? Joel, go first.
Still confusing.
William?
Stable.
Jake?
Unfortunate.
Samuel?
Uninspiring.
Andrew?
All over the place.
Noah?
Chaotic.
John?
Uneventful.
Okay. So, sure. Let me do this quickly. A sizable majority of Americans are unhappy with how things are going in our country, and they say they want to change. Focusing only on Harris and Trump for a moment, I'd like to know who you'd say is the bigger agent of change. In other words, if one of them got elected, things would change more than if the other got elected. Everybody understand the question? By a show of fingers, who would say that Harris is the bigger agent of change? One of you. The other 6 of you would say Trump? By a show of fingers, who puts a lot of blame on Harris for things that went wrong during Biden's term? I'll take that as none of you. Okay, I don't know whether you guys are betting people or not. For the sake of this next question, just work with me. If someone required you, I'm not going to, but if someone required you to bet $50 on the outcome of this presidential election in November, which candidate would you bet on winning? Note, I'm not asking you who you want to win politically. I'm asking, in order to win the bet, realistically, who will win so that you get the $50? It's like putting a bet on a horse race without caring about which horse, personally being invested in either horse. So by a show of fingers, who would say that you think that that Harris will win? You put the $50 on Harris. 6 of you. And Noah, you put it on Trump? Okay, great. All right. And quickly, Noah, why would you put it on Trump?
I don't know. I have a feeling and like an overarching sense that a lot of people are upset with how things have been over the last 4 years and the lack of things happening. And I think that people are going to vote to see change, whether or not it's change we want to see.
Got it. Okay. So let's do a quick word association exercise. Actually, a couple of them. I'm going to mention a person, and I want to hear the first thing that comes to mind when you hear that person's name. I'm looking for a quick word or phrase. Do not overthink it. Okay? Again, I'll call on you one at a time. First person I'm going to ask you about, Vice President Harris. Brett.
Fake.
Okay. Drake.
Unfit.
Ebram.
Lucky.
Derek.
Puppet.
Eric.
Crisis.
Brandon.
Dangerous.
Sam.
Unrealistic.
James.
Middle class.
Sorry, say it again.
Middle class. Middle class.
Middle class.
That's you.
Okay. Middle class. Got it. Thank you. I'm an old guy, so I gotta repeat it for me. Thank you. All right. Next, Former President Trump. What's the first word or phrase that comes to mind with former President Trump? Brandon,
Negotiator.
Sam,
Confident.
James,
Racist.
Brett,
Arrogant.
Drake.
Economically sound.
All right. Ebra,
Quick-witted.
Derek.
Cocky.
Say it again.
Cocky.
Tacky.
Cocky.
Cocky. Sorry, cocky. Okay. And Eric?
Diplomatic.
Diplomatic. Okay. Got it. So let's go back to Vice President Harris. What, if anything, do you like about her? Any of you?
I like with the Biden administration just like cutting down on inflation. Like I know that was their goal. Not to say if they did it successfully or not, but I did admire that goal as part of her and her administration.
Okay. What else?
I think she was able to step up where she had to, especially when Biden's health was deteriorating.
Okay. What else? The six of you have anything that you like about her?
I think she's able to identify some of the problems that the middle class is having, but she doesn't necessarily have the best solutions for them. But she knows what the problems are.
All right. What else?
I like how she says she's going to give funding for small business owners.
Funding for small business owners. Okay. Got it. What else? That's it? All right. Let's go back to former President Trump. What, if anything, do you like about him?
I was far better off economically. I mean, boat races, better off.
Okay. What else?
I appreciate his ability to keep peace in conflict areas internationally. The glooming threat of World War III, while it might be tinfoil hat, is more ever clear now than it was. That man brokered peace agreements that no other president would have ever fathomed. And I admire that.
Okay.
I can agree with that his negotiating skills. I think he gets that from his obviously business experience that he's had in the past.
Okay. What else?
Yeah, I agree with Brandon on like the diplomacy that he was able to conduct with European countries and also the Middle East, and being able to do that, even being able to negotiate with like the Taliban and such.
Okay. Anything else?
He's extremely blunt and doesn't really care about offending anyone. He just says whatever he wants to say.
Okay.
I personally appreciate that he's not a politician, and he doesn't get tied up in identity politics and social nonsense that doesn't really actually matter at the end of the day.
Okay. Let's go back to Vice President Harris. What, if anything, do you dislike about her?
I would say my biggest thing is it was kind of handed to her on a silver platter from when Biden had to drop out to when basically she got nominated to be the next president. She really didn't have to do anything.
Okay. What else do you dislike about her?
I can second that. We've been spoon-fed, saving democracy for the last 3.5 years, and there was no democratic process to elect Kamala Harris. And
hang on a second. Hang on a second. I want to focus on her, not the process. What do you dislike about her?
I think she's disingenuous, and I think her policies have no actual real. I don't even know. I mean, I don't even know what her policies even are. She's put out maybe 4 things she wants to do, none of which are logical or good for what she purports them to actually help.
Got it. Drake, what do you dislike? Drake, what do you dislike about Harris?
Yeah, I was gonna say I agree with Brett. And also I feel like we don't know who she actually is. It seems like every time she gets on stage, depending on where she is, there's like a new accent or new something. Just something seems off. I don't know. She just seems like someone else said earlier, a puppet. Something's fake about her. The way she speaks and talks.
Okay. Sam, what do you dislike about her?
She said a lot of things, but she could have done those things in her terms too. You know, when she's in the with Biden, she just says a lot of things that she hasn't done anything.
Okay. James, anything you dislike about her?
I don't really know. It's hard to trust her because yeah, it's hard to trust her.
It's hard to trust her. Okay. Got it. All right. Let's go back to former President Trump. What, if anything, do you dislike about him?
I think his bluntness can be good at times, but it can also bite him in the ass at the same time.
Okay. What else?
Yeah, I
Derek?
agree with Derek. I think, and then also sometimes on like Twitter or X, he kind of goes overboard.
Okay. Eric, what do you dislike about Trump?
I guess I also agree. Like, I dislike his unprofessionalism and just the way he talks about certain people that shouldn't be said that way. Specifically, like when he talked about a reporter that had like a mental handicap, and I just didn't like that situation. So,
okay. What else do you guys not like about Trump?
He can revert to just complete lies and word salad when he gets on tangents. Like, he does have tact answers and actual facts to back up what he's saying, but he just loses himself in tangents, and he's so far gone by the time a couple sentences pass, and he just can't get out of that unprofessionalism and just word vomit. And it, I think, really hurts his credibility and credence and just overall professionalism as someone who's supposed to be seen as a leader.
Okay, got it. So imagine you guys could have the experience of spending a half hour hanging out at a bar with either Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. So if you had to choose by a show of fingers, who would choose hanging with Trump? All 8 of you. Ebram, why Trump?
I mean, I think he's actually genuine. You'd talk to him and he'd actually have a real conversation with you. And he's like one of the most like charismatic and funniest people ever in politics. Whereas Kamala would be very like she wouldn't really have like a genuine interaction with you. Everything would just be a regurgitated answer or something. One of like the 3 or 4 things she just repeats in every interview.
Okay. Brandon, why Trump?
He was an accomplished businessman before he joined politics, so I think there's a lot to learn there from a business perspective and how to build wealth. I feel that a conversation with Harris would just be met with the inappropriate and misplaced laughter that just coats everything she says and would seem very disingenuous.
Okay. Any other reasons why you choose Trump other than the ones we already talked about?
I mean, I can share just, I'm Jewish personally, so I've found that Trump has had a very succinct and very clear answer on his support of Israel. And I have found that Kamala has teetered the line of just, again, word salad. I don't really know where she stands on that issue. And I would like to talk to a leader of our country that supports Israel and I feel comfortable speaking with in a safe space about. And I think Kamala, you know, to Abram's point, sorry, is just completely disingenuous, has her talking points and her bullets, and is frankly a danger to me and my people.
Got it. By a show of fingers, who might not vote in this election and might sit it out? Any of you not? Is it possible? For any of you, is it reasonably likely that you will not vote? Any of you? None of you. Okay. By a show of fingers, who has given serious thought to voting for a third-party candidate for president this year?
How do you define serious? Like, that sounds subjective, in my opinion.
Fully subjective.
I've thought about it. I don't think seriously, but I've thought about it. So I'm like a half one, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's one of those deals where you could vote third party, but at the end of the day, they don't have a chance to win it.
It's a
So I'd
zero
rather
sum
put my
game.
vote somewhere else.
Yeah, why would I do
Agreed.
that? It's stupid.
Okay, hang on a second. Don't. I love it when my respondents are ahead of me as opposed to behind me. So
Sorry.
I'll take this the wrong way. But I just want to make sure that I'm getting what I need to get. So for you, Derek, was it like a fleeting thought that you might vote for a third-party candidate, or was it kind of like you actually sat and thought, well, maybe I'll vote for this third-party candidate? Did that like?
It wasn't like a long thought. It's one of those deals where you look at both sides of it, and I mean, one way or the other, that's the way it's going to go. Is it the best way? No. Is there probably somebody else in the 300 million people in the United States that would be better fit to lead the country? Probably. But the likelihood of that third party getting elected, not high.
Okay, so you had the idea and you dismissed it very quickly. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Correct.
Same for you, Brett?
Yeah, I mean,
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, well said.
So none of you have had a really serious thought about voting for a third-party candidate. Okay. So please stop and think about this next question before you answer, and I'll call on you again one at a time. I'd like to know, so all of you in this group are leaning toward voting for Trump. And I'd like to know how you ended up deciding to vote for Trump. I want to hear how you arrived at the decision. Tell me about the process you went through, if you can do it concisely, how you ended up with Trump as the person you would vote for. So, Sam, why don't you go first? How did you end up with Trump? Like, what was the process in your mind? How did you get there?
Yeah, I think for me, at the end of it, I was looking at it, just honestly speaking, like selfishly, if which president's going to actually make my life better, whether it's as economically, in terms of curbing inflation or better job opportunities or tax breaks. I was just able to look at objectively which president's going to have a closer achievement to be able to help my life become better economically.
Okay. So how did you arrive at Trump? What made you think that his plan would be better than Harris's?
Just his economic policies, in terms of curbing inflation, to be able to just create more opportunities for people to, have less, to be able to pay less taxes that go back to the market, to be able to create more businesses, more incentives to be able to have businesses to come by within the states.
Okay. And how do you think he would curb inflation?
I think lowering interest rates with the banks federally from the feds to be able to, pretty much bring those inflations down to be able to have cost of money borrowing less for people, for the public, whether it's getting a loan for mortgages or other business loans, things like that.
And how would he lower interest rates?
With the feds.
He controls the Federal Reserve Bank?
I think with just regulations they could set, the policies they could set.
Okay, thank you. Drake, how'd you end up with Trump?
Kind of along the same lines as Sam. I think just selfishly speaking, my life was better back when he was in office than currently, both monetarily wise, I think, like geopolitically wise, things like that. And also, I just feel like I trust him more
Why do you trust him more?
because I feel like when he was in office, I feel like there wasn't as much world conflict. I feel like things were getting done, such as, I don't know, interest rates were at all-time low. The housing market was doing fine. Yeah, I feel like I could just trust him more, and kind of going back to the point where he was very blunt and honest with his answers, but that's something I kind of liked out of a politician because I feel like a lot of times they like to dance around the truth or dance around whatever their political party wants them to say. But I feel like Trump was more honest.
Okay. Thank you. Derek, how'd you end up with Trump?
Yeah, I would say similar to what they mentioned already. It was basically when he was in office, is right when I was graduating college, looking to buy a house, get into the real world and things like that, and going out buying groceries. And now here we are, how many years later, and that same groceries costing me how much more to get and everything like that. So that's why I'm voting for him again in the next upcoming election.
Okay. Eric, how about you?
For me, I just like the way he handled international conflict. I believe the things that are happening in Israel would not have happened if he was president currently. And I also believe the same thing about the Ukrainian-Russian war as well. And I'm just concerned that with Harris, like, and not having Trump, that we're going to be ending up being the international police as usual and having to enter one of those two conflicts. And I believe like before that, the United States and the whole world was a bit safer, just having Donald Trump doing the diplomacy for the United States.
Okay. James, how did you end up with Trump?
Trump actually grew on me. At first, I didn't really know too much about him except for what like the message was saying. Then when I actually started paying attention, I liked his honesty, and I like when I like how I'm sorry about that. I like how he the tax cuts that he talks about. I like how he handles international problems, I guess, and yeah, his bluntness is good and bad, but when he says something, he means it. He's not just trying to please people.
Got it. Thank you. Brandon.
Similar to what other folks have said, economically life was better during his term. I strongly agree with what folks have said about the international conflicts. Just looking at what's been happening even with Putin's been saying over in Russia, he's mocking us, encouraging us to elect Harris. That should speak for itself. We're not going in a good direction internationally. The international community is laughing at us. Under Trump, sure, maybe he's crass or whatever it may be, but he got things done, brokered peace, shook hands with the North Koreans, something unfathomable before. There was peace in the Middle East. And I agree. I don't think Putin would have ever invaded Ukraine under Trump. I don't, and the Chinese are looking at Taiwan. It's something that should be concerning for international business. Overseas manufacturing is at risk if that is to happen. And again, something unfathomable that would never have happened or even been considered under Trump. They respected him more, and we're being laughed at now. And I think putting Harris in office, especially with how everything seems to be a joke to her and just the way she communicates, especially in interviews, we're just going to see more of that. I'm concerned for my future and my peers' future that are of drafting age.
Brett, how'd you get to Trump?
It's really hard for me. I mean, I unequivocally agree with just about everything that's been said, but I think the original way you framed the question stood out to me. Like, what was the moment? I mean, to me, there was a profound moment that happened, and it was when Joe Biden, air quotes, stepped down. We're talking about a media group, largely on one side, that spent a year gaslighting the American public. This man is fit. This man is strong. The dude's pooping his pants. And then all of a sudden, we flick a switch and here's the VP and she's strong. And then, oh, by the way, we're not going to put her in front of you live. We're going to do 2 interviews and 1 debate and then go press the button. Stop it. Stop it. Like, that was the profound moment for me. That was like, this is a farce. This is a joke. And I will not fall for it.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. Abram.
I don't think she'd have any chance to actually become the candidate if they actually held a real primary. There's not really any substance to any answer she says. She just repeats, I was born in a middle class household, or I was a prosecutor, every single time anyone asks her a question. And she doesn't really have like a very strong will like any other president. She kind of just changes her political beliefs and what she wants to do based on whatever is convenient. So I kind of vote on who will do the least harm. And I mean, Trump is not perfect, but at least with his presidency, we know what that would look like. The economy was in a much better state, and so were foreign affairs.
So I want to understand one thing from all 8 of you. So I'd like to know whether your vote for Trump is a vote more pro-Trump or whether it's more anti-Harris. Everybody understand what I'm asking by the question? Are you more voting against her or you're more voting for him? So by a show of fingers, how many of you would say that your vote is more anti-Harris than it is pro-Trump? Four of you. So the other 4 of you would say that it's more pro-Trump because you like him more than it's you dislike her.
Correct.
Okay. Got it. And I just want to ask one other thing. So a number of you mentioned the state of the economy was the reason why you wanted to have Trump back in office. So just playing devil's advocate with you guys for a second. Some would say that, okay, the economy was great 2017, 2018, 2019. But when push came to shove and the pandemic hit, Trump completely botched it. Unemployment went through the roof. Supply chains were disrupted. He completely mismanaged it. And if you put him back in office, he could easily mismanage another crisis. And one of your top responsibilities is not to screw up a crisis. What do you say in response to that? Someone says, yeah, he was great, but when it really counted, he really screwed it up. Anybody want to just tell me why that's a crummy argument?
I would say it
I
all
would say the
comes down to
questions
check and balances.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
sorry,
Trump
Derek, go
is-
ahead. Derek, start again. I'm sorry.
I was going to say
Sorry.
that's why we have the checks and balances. Yeah, Trump was the president, and I guess you could say has the final call, but at the end of the day, it still has to go through multiple different channels to get anywhere.
Okay, wait a second. So Trump doesn't bear the responsibility of what happened with the pandemic?
I would say at the end of the day, he was the leader of the country, so he should. But I'm saying also it wasn't just him calling the shots, at
Okay.
least from my point of view.
All right. Who else was calling the shots? Congress, you mean?
Yeah, I would say there's obviously other people that are within the government giving suggestions, saying he has to do this or do that. And yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have a different reason, different pushback on what I said?
I think the question's loaded, and I think it's missing some key details.
Go ahead. Tell me why the
Um,
argument I'm posing is wrong.
Sure. So just the man ran the country like a business, and just like any business, a leader trusts their subject matter experts to advise them accordingly. So when we say unemployment was high, the reality is unemployment was high because businesses were being forced to shut down for the COVID restrictions, something that he took by the advice of his advisement team and Fauci. What else was it? Can you repeat the question again? I'd like to respond to each item.
So I want to belabor this. I have a lot of other questions to get to. My question was, but he was in charge. He's the one who listened to the advice, made those decisions, and the economy went into a tailspin. That's the argument that people would make against him. I'm not saying I'm making it. I'm just making it as playing devil's advocate with you. So my question, why isn't that a good reason to not vote for him again?
There's a lot of other factors to consider outside of that. And as a lot of people have echoed in this conversation, even that topic aside, the general consensus everyone's life was better. So if everyone's life was better and there was a global pandemic and all these awful things that we said happened, imagine if that pandemic wasn't there, how much more fruitful it could have been.
I'm really struggling with that. Like, I guess is the question: are we to fault Donald Trump for the pandemic and the response, or is it the economic? Sorry, my dog's barking. Give me a second here.
Okay, let me move on. I've got too many other things I have to get to. My apologies. So each of you supports Trump, but not enthusiastically. What's keeping you from supporting Trump wholeheartedly? Where's the hesitation? You want to tell me about the hesitation? Eric, why don't you tell me about the hesitation?
My hesitation would be just like all the PR scandals, whether it be with Stormy Daniels or just the trials that went on. I guess I'd be more enthusiastic if he just didn't have as much like drama and things around him. But I also believe that's just part of being a politician as well. So.
Okay, so you said you described them as PR scandals. Meaning like these was it like the things that happened weren't real, or you just made up by the media? Is that what you mean by a PR scandal?
I guess they were real, but just having all this information leak out where he had government documents at his estate in Florida and just Stormy Daniels as well. However, I believe all these things are also just not that significant in a way and just more of just like negative press.
Okay, got it. Other hesitation, different from what Eric said. Tell me what other hesitations you have about Trump.
I'd like to see him speak more concisely. I think, as folks have mentioned before, he has a tendency of getting in a tizzy and going off topic, and he was so close to making that point, and then he takes a left turn, and we miss it all. I think if he could stay on track and speak more concisely, I think less people would be against him than there are.
Okay, Brandon, I'm just curious. Do you think that's age related?
Maybe. I think more it has to do with there's a lot of things being thrown at him, and he feels he needs to respond to it all, and never has the allotted time, be it in an interview or in a debate, to respond to everything to the extent he'd like to, that he's just ends up going for words or phrases that he think will have the biggest wallop of impact. But I understand the intention, but it doesn't always work.
Okay. Sam, what's your hesitation about Trump?
Yeah, I mean, I think also like what Brandon has mentioned with, I think part of it is also age. I'm thinking if Biden is able to go through something similar where, I mean, I don't want to assume it, but he had symptoms of dementia, and I'm not saying Trump will get dementia, but there's also potential, with leadership that could be faltered based on his age that may, go against what he said he will do and he doesn't do, with any other presidents.
Let me ask you, just by a quick show of fingers, if Trump gets elected, he'll be the oldest person ever elected president, even older than Biden was when Biden got elected. By a show of fingers, is that a concern for any of you? Show of fingers. Who would say that's a concern?
Yes.
Age limits.
5 of you. Okay. Got it. So what evidence do you have that Donald Trump understands your concerns? Ebram, what evidence do you have that Trump understands your concerns?
Because when people ask him questions that people want to know about, like how are you going to address inflation, he actually gives like substantive answers. Like he talks about reducing the price of energy and construction and oil and how all those things are kind of causing inflation.
Okay. Drake, what evidence do you have that Trump understands your concerns?
Yeah, kind of going off what Ebram said. I feel like if you were to put him in a room in front of a bunch of, regular citizens, he could have a Q&A going over all his policies and everything that he believes in and stands for. But if you were to do the same with Kamala, I feel like she would fold under the pressure and kind of get tripped up and, maybe tell you what you want to hear, but you just don't know. I just feel like I couldn't trust her in that situation.
Okay. So this is a hypothetical. We'll start with a hypothetical. What advice would you give Kamala Harris to convince you to switch and vote for her instead of Trump? In other words, you'd say to her, you need to do such and such to get me to consider changing my vote and vote for you instead.
I'd say like
Every
be
single-
authentic. I feel
Sorry.
like she's just.
I said one at a time. Drake, go ahead.
I'd say be authentic. I feel like I just can't trust what she's saying because her charisma and the way she's speaking at these events, it just doesn't seem real. Like she's not compelling, and I feel like there's not a lot of, I don't know. I just don't really believe what she's saying a lot of the time.
Okay, so let me push you. How would you tell her to be authentic? There's 6 weeks left until the election. What would you tell her to do differently?
At this point, I don't even know. It might be too late. I mean, I feel like for her to flip a switch like this, for me, would also seem kind of fit. I don't know. I don't know what I'd tell her, to be honest.
Okay. Someone else want to tell me what would you tell Harris to do in order to get her to get you to change your vote?
I think dropping the laugh is a good start. But I agree with Drake. I think she's a little too far gone. That should have been something she thought about months ago. It's almost a meme on the internet of comparing something she's saying now and then the exact opposite she said that a handful of months ago. So I also don't trust her. And even if she tried to flip a switch and be serious and stay the course with one thing, I I wouldn't know what's reality with her. I think she should have thought of this long ago.
Okay, got it.
I agree. I'll also just add one thing. I mean, to me, it feels like she's literally hit the copy paste key on Donald Trump policies and made them robotic and has somehow managed to make them not likable. I mean, you look at the no tax on tips, you look at the child tax credit, you look at, oh, now she's going to tighten the border. Well, oh, weren't you charged with that 3.5 years ago? What happened? So, like, I just, you talk about relating. She's trying to steal people like what you have in front of you right here. And we sniff the bullshit and say, no, thank you.
Okay. By a show of fingers, would any of you say it's realistic that you'll switch and actually vote for Harris? Anybody in this group would realistically consider switching?
Absolutely
None.
not.
Okay. By a show of fingers, who has at least one parent who plans to vote for the candidate you do not plan to vote for? 4 of you. Okay. Drake, Brandon, Brett, and James. For the 4 of you, has that parent tried to persuade you to vote for that candidate?
Yeah.
Who has? For Brett and for Brandon. Okay. So Brandon, how'd you respond?
We had a long discussion, similar to, I would say, what we're having now, discussing their point of view and my point of view. And when they stopped having answers for me, we agreed to disagree and moved on.
Okay. Brett, how about you?
Similarly, it's mostly my mother. My father is kind of just, I don't know, he does what my mom says, kind of. But yeah, we had a heated discussion and learned that we're never going to agree. She's the type that she has to be right, whereas I'm more about dialogue versus debate. So we learned to just not address it and kind of, it's just, we don't talk about it.
Got it. Okay, thank you. So next, Cindy's going to play 2 videos, each about 1 minute long. First one is Trump attacking Harris, and the second is Harris attacking Trump. So I want to get your reaction after you watch it. So by a show of fingers, who's heard Trump say things like this to Harris, about Harris? Show of fingers, who's heard Trump say things like, so all of you have heard that. And by a show of fingers, who's heard Harris say things like this about Trump? All of you. And by a show of fingers, does seeing this cause you to shift how you feel about Harris or Trump? If you have your view shifted at all about Harris or Trump after seeing this?
Finger up if it did shift your view.
Yeah, if it shifted. Did your view shift at all? James, for you it did. How? I think you're muted, James. I can't hear you at all. Hey, James, Cindy's going to give you a call and try to work out the sound issues, okay? All right. I can circle back to you on this question. Um, so both campaigns are trying to appeal to men, but in different ways. I'm curious what you make of this just released ad from a group called White Dudes for Harris. By the way, how many of you guys have heard of this group? None of you. One of you has.
I think I've seen social media stuff from them. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, great. By a show of fingers, who thinks that message will appeal to guys who are undecided about who they plan to vote for? None of you think that will appeal to guys who are undecided? Okay.
Don't see the relevance.
If you're a crypto investor,
Okay. Got it. How will voting for Trump make your life better? Derek, how will voting for Trump make your life better?
I'm hoping he's able to turn the economy back around and drop interest rates, lower prices on just basically everyday gas, overall groceries, just living expenses in general.
Okay. Eric?
I think having him elected will restore the value of the American dollar and also just make me be able to sleep better at night that America's protected just with the way that he handles international conflict.
Okay. Got it. How would a Harris victory make your life worse? Ebram, how would her winning make your life worse?
Same way the last 3.5 years did. Prices keep going up. Immigration uncontrolled. A lot of uncertainty in terms of like foreign affairs. So same of the last 3 years.
Okay. So I want you to think back to when Trump was president from January 2017 to January 2021. I'd like you to each give me a word or a phrase to describe what life was like in America during that period of time. Anybody have a word or a phrase to describe what life in America was like during that period of time? All right.
Stable.
Hang on a second. Brandon.
Prosperity.
Ebram.
Stable.
Drake.
Peace of mind.
Derek.
Stability.
Brett.
yeah, stable was the word I thought of.
Sam.
Affordable.
Eric.
Stable.
All right. And I'd like you to think think about the period that we've been in while Biden's been in office. So from January 2021 to the present, please give me a word or phrase to describe what life in America has been like during Biden's administration. Okay. Sam.
Chaos.
Eric.
Worrisome.
Drake.
Unstable.
Derek.
Unstable.
Brett.
Angst ridden.
Brandon.
A joke.
Ebram.
Expensive.
Expensive. Okay. A sizable majority of Americans are unhappy with how things are going in the country, and they say they want to change. Focusing only on Harris and Trump for the moment, I'd like to know who you'd say is the bigger agent of change. In other words, if one of them got elected, things would change more than if the other got elected. Everybody got that? So by a show of fingers, who says Harris is the bigger agent of change? None of you. So all of you would say that Trump is the bigger agent of change. By a show of fingers, who puts a lot of blame on Harris for things that went wrong during Biden's term? Puts a lot of blame on Harris for things that went wrong in Biden's term. So you guys don't put a lot of blame on her. Okay.
Depends.
Okay. All right. I don't know whether you guys are betting people or not, but following question, work with me and pretend that you're a betting person. If someone required you to bet $50 on the outcome of the election in November, which candidate would you bet on winning? Note that I'm not asking you who you want to win because of ideology or politics. I'm asking who you think realistically will win, like who's going to win the horse race. Okay? So by a show of fingers, how many of you say that you think that Harris will win the election? 2 of you. Who thinks Trump's going to win? 5 of you.